What is up, everybody? We are back here at King Film Sports for our first college football playoff ranking predictions and scenario analyses here as we have 4 weeks left in the college football regular season, then some conference championship games after that. And the first committee rankings will come out tomorrow. So I'm going to be giving our personal playoff rankings here and then laying out how all of these teams can make the 12-team playoff. We'll be going 1 through 25 here. So starting out, we've got Ohio State, Indiana, and then Texas A&M. That's our ranking, and it's the same for the AP poll. I really think you could justify any assortment of these three teams, and ultimately it doesn't really matter as these things will play out. Ohio State probably plays Indiana in the Big Ten championship game, and things get decided there. Texas A&M could be dealt a loss later on. But I do think that Ohio State has been the most impressive team coming off of that national championship last year. I mean, they cover every game. That means they're winning these games by multiple possessions. Obviously, you have the big win against Texas to start out the season. And I'm going to say they're pretty much clinched for the playoffs. I mean, you look at the schedule, they're at Purdue, 28-point favorites, then UCLA at home, Rutgers, then obviously that big game at Michigan, obviously lost the last 4 times against Michigan. And the reason that's important is, like last year, they could be penciled into that Big Ten championship game. Then you lose to Michigan, then some of the tie-breaking scenarios might come into play. They might actually miss out on the Big Ten championship game, and that could influence whether they are a top 4 seed and get that bye or not. But as for now, Ohio State safely in the playoff. Then we go to Indiana, very similar here. They're at Penn State. That's really the last losable game. They're only a 2-touchdown favorite in that game, but we know that Cignetti and this team always wins and covers in blowout fashion. Then you've got Wisconsin and then Purdue there. So probably looking at 12-0 heading into the Big Ten title. Then last we get to Texas A&M. I could hear the justification, as I said, for TAMU being number 1 with that huge road win in Notre Dame week 2, but some of the other results were actually pretty close, like that Arkansas game and a couple others. They don't have the easiest schedule coming down the stretch either. You have Mizzou this next week. They're under a touchdown favorite in that game, even against Mizzou's backup quarterback. Then you have South Carolina with a dynamic Lenore Sellers. And then you have Texas to end the season there on Black Friday. That's not going to be an easy game. No one's even saying that they're going to be favored in that game. And also with some of the tiebreakers in the SEC, if Texas A&M loses a game, then they might not be a lock for the SEC title just because their strength of schedule is so weak and because they do not have the tiebreakers over these other teams there. So definitely want to win out if you're Texas A&M, or they could be on the outside looking in for Atlanta to end the season. Then coming back to these rankings, we get into the one-loss teams. Clearly, Alabama, I think, at 7-1 should be the 4th-ranked team here with just a slew of these wins after that FSU loss to start out the season. I think 3 more wins should get them in, and they do have a very dominant metric in terms of strength of schedule, so they will be the beneficiary of a lot of these tiebreakers, and they are currently undefeated in the SEC, so definitely looking to get to Atlanta for the SEC title game. You look at some of these games, at home versus LSU, at home versus Oklahoma, they're by no means a lock to win those games. A lot of their wins have been close this season, and then at an Auburn team without Hugh Freeze, that's not a lock necessarily either. So I think they win 3 of 4 of these games and just get to the SEC title game, and I think they should be in. Similarly for Georgia, I think if they win 3 of their final 4 and potentially make it to Atlanta for the SEC title game, they should be in. And these games are also a bit tricky as well. Going to Mississippi State, you're only a touchdown favorite there. All of these Georgia games seem to be close. Then against a very physical Texas team that is looking for revenge after getting swept last year by this Georgia team. And then going to Mercedes-Benz Stadium against Georgia Tech. And that game, if you guys remember, went to like 7 or 8 overtimes last year, and that was at Georgia against a worse Georgia Tech team. I could definitely see Georgia getting knocked off potentially in 1 or 2 of these final 4 games. Then going back to the rankings, I actually have BYU at number 6 here, and I think if they get 3 more wins, they should be in. They could probably afford to be 11-1 and maybe lose that Big 12 championship game. Obviously, a headliner this week, the noon game against Texas Tech. That's going to be tough. They're double-digit underdogs. Then TCU at night at home. I mean, I don't think BYU is necessarily an elite team, so that's not a lock. Then at Cincinnati and then UCF at home. So definitely a ton of roadblocks here, but BYU's gotten through all of them thus far this season. Then Ole Miss, I think, only has to win 2 of their remaining 3. They, much similar to Texas A&M, do not have a lot of these tiebreakers in SEC play, so probably not looking great to get to Atlanta right now. You have that Florida game and then the Egg Bowl on Black Friday. So we'll see how they end up finishing there. And then Oregon. This actually is tougher than a lot of people think, and Oregon doesn't really have a dominant win thus far. Everyone is thinking of that Penn State whiteout game, but obviously we know what happened to Penn State after that. And then you get blown up by Indiana at home. Really wasn't even as close as the final score indicated there. You go to Iowa this week. That's a very tough spot. Then you have USC at home, that dynamic offense, and then going to Washington to end the season. I just think they need to win 3 of these 4, but that's not a lock right now. So be on the lookout for Oregon there and a couple of those other Big Ten teams who could steal their bid. Then we get to the 9 through 16 ranked teams, and here we get to Texas Tech, who is definitely looking like the favorite in the Big 12 right now if they can knock off BYU at home this Saturday. Then you have UCF and West Virginia, so they should be in the Big 12 title game, and from there, maybe they could afford a loss, but probably just better off winning that game. But I do think that they are the most talented team right now in the conference. Then you get to Oklahoma. Some people are saying they can afford another loss. I'm really not seeing it at this point. I think the clear demarcation line is going to be 10-2 versus 9-3 in the SEC, and it's going to be tough. You have to go to Alabama after the bye week, then Mizzou, and then LSU at home. And with Mateer's hand injury, it's kind of in doubt right now. I mean, they definitely have to play much better than they did in Neyland this past Saturday, but playoff is still open with that talented defense. Then you get to Notre Dame. Some people are saying that Notre Dame doesn't deserve to be in. I think they're already in the top 12 right now, and not the best schedule coming up going forward. These games should all be very winnable for them. Navy at Pitt, then Syracuse, and then at Stanford there. All the work on their resume has been done. It doesn't help them that Miami continues to lose games because they did lose that game in Miami week 1, but that TAMU loss continues to age better, and maybe USC can rattle off a couple more wins there as well. Getting into some of the more of these teams, we get to the ACC. I think the ACC is really bad right now. Even in spite of a lot of these teams with these good records, I think they get 1, maybe 2 teams in. Maybe the runner-up of that conference title game can get in here. You take a look at Louisville, who has 4 games remaining here. I think maybe they could afford to win out and lose the ACC championship game. This is not the toughest schedule. Highlight that game at SMU, and they always seem to have trouble with Kentucky there, so we will see. Then you get to UVA, who does have a loss to NC State, I believe, but that was not a conference game somehow, so they are undefeated and looking like they will get to the ACC conference title game. And you have Wake Forest, then at Duke. That is a huge game because Duke could potentially make the ACC conference championship, and then Va-Tech at home as well. They probably need to win all of those games just because their strength of schedule is not great right now. No really good wins. Then we get to Texas here in the SEC, and I think they have to win out here. And then maybe they would make it to Atlanta for the SEC title game because they do have that one out-of-conference loss as well. Really just comes all down to this game at Georgia. If they win that one, then they should be comfortably into the playoff going into that final game, and that's another must-win against an elite Texas A&M team. So they have their work cut out for them, but if Arch continues to play well, I think they could have a chance here, but we will see. I definitely think they have to win all 3 of those games. Then we get to Vanderbilt. Tough loss for them this past weekend, but some window dressing to get that game down to 3 points. I think they have to win against Auburn. Not a lot to do that. And then Kentucky at home. And then very tough game at Neyland against a Tennessee team who really would like that win as well. So Vandy, in my opinion, definitely has to win out. But if they do that, I do think they actually would make the playoff in that scenario. And then finally, we get to the 2-loss Utah team here. And I think there's actually a good chance if you get some of those teams at the top of the Big 12, such as BYU losing, that Utah could make the Big 12 championship game. They would obviously have to win these last 3 here, but not a murderer's row by any stretch at Baylor, Kansas State, and then Kansas. So if they win all those 3 and then get some good breaks in the standings department, they could make the Big 12 title game and then perhaps get some revenge on Texas Tech. And with that, we get to the final slate of the rankings here, 17 to 25. I have Georgia Tech here at number 17. Even in spite of that 8-1 record, their defense just did not show up last week against NC State there. They've got these last 3 games at Boston College, Pitt, and then Georgia. It would really be interesting if they won these next 3 and then lost the ACC title. Would they be in? I would probably say yes in that scenario, but probably win these first 2, then make the ACC championship game. And if you win that, you're in. If you lose that in the Georgia game, then you're probably out. Then we get to Miami. Very tough loss for them at SMU. They do not control their own destiny. Some may argue even if they win out, then they're probably still not in. I mean, we'll see. I still don't even think they win out, though, just because of how Carson Beck is playing and the Mario Cristobal coaching staff. You've got Syracuse, NC State, at Virginia Tech, and then at Pitt. So definitely not a guarantee for them to win out here. I do not think that they're done losing games. Then we get to Missouri. I think they control their own destiny as well. They have to win out, and I do not think that they will. You've got Texas A&M. This is a good spot here this next week. Then Mississippi State, not a lock to win that. At Oklahoma, very tough game. And then at Arkansas against offense, they're not a lock to win that either. So definitely could see some more losses here. But if Mizzou does win out, they do control their own destiny for the playoffs, in my opinion. Come back here to number 20, USC. Very much similar for them. They have to win out all of these games. Northwestern at home, but coming off of that Nebraska game, short week, not a lock to win that. Iowa is always a tough game with that physicality. Then you go to Oregon. I do think that that is a winnable game. We'll see how Oregon looks against Iowa this next week. And then UCLA at home. If USC wins all of those games, I could see them making the playoff, certainly there. Also, they only have that one conference loss because the other one was to Notre Dame. So maybe they could back their way into the Big Ten title game, but very unlikely there. Then similarly for Michigan here, if you win this game against Northwestern and then Maryland, and then somehow you can beat Ohio State for the 5th straight season, then they could be looking good to get that Big Ten title bid there. And then maybe at that point they're in regardless of if they beat Indiana in the Big Ten championship, but really just need to focus on that Ohio State game and not tripping up before that. Then we get to Memphis here, and I think they just need to win out and win the American. If they do that, then they're likely in the playoff. Really interesting in the American right now because I think that the G5 likely comes from this conference, and you have a few dominant teams here. Navy finally took their first loss this past week. Memphis only has the one loss, and then North Texas and USF are probably the best teams from a power rating perspective. You also have Tulane, East Carolina, and then Temple and UTSA in it as well. So it's going to be very interesting coming down the stretch. Memphis is the only ranked team right now, but I think that the winner of this conference, regardless, is going to end up making the playoffs. So that'll be a very interesting race over the next month here. We'll see if Memphis can win out against Tulane at home, then at East Carolina, and then home versus Navy. And that Black Friday game will probably decide who makes the American title game. Then we get to Iowa, very much in the same situation as USC here in the Big Ten. They just have to win out. These two teams actually play. Could be eliminated this Saturday in Kinnick versus Oregon. That's going to be a very entertaining game. And then you've got Michigan State and then at Nebraska to end the season, but Rayola's out, so that's certainly a more winnable game than it would be. Then you've got Washington here. They're in the same situation. You have at Wisconsin, Purdue at home, at UCLA. Those should all be wins, and then close the season up at home against Oregon. That should be a very entertaining game to end the season, maybe an elimination game if both those teams are 9-2. And then finally, we finish it out with Cincinnati here. They have 2 losses. They probably need to win all of these games, then get lucky with some of the tie-breaking scenarios, similar to what I mentioned with Utah, and then make the Big 12 title game and win it there. And some of these games are definitely difficult, but that would really help their cause if BYU loses this next week, and then they can beat them. Then you win at TCU to end the season as well. So that kind of squares out all the scenarios. These 17 through 25 teams basically all need to win out and then get some fortunate breaks and probably win their conferences if they control their own destiny. But we know for a lot of these teams that won't happen. So with that being said, let me know what you guys think of my analysis and rankings in the comments down below. Are there any teams that I ranked in a bad position that you would want to correct? Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. As always, if you'd like to subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.